On May 28, 2025, during the Putnam County, Florida tax deed auction, questions arose about possible market manipulation and bid rigging. This video examines one case and its broader implications. We present the publicly available facts. Viewers should review the records and form their own opinions.
Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Consider parcel identification number 20-11-24-7962-0070-0030. At the auction, it was purchased by Willie Velozen, the paid conservation land director for the Putnam Land Conservancy, PLC. At the same auction, the Putnam Land Conservancy was the record title holder of at least 2 other properties being sold for unpaid taxes. As the legal owner, the organization had the responsibility to pay those taxes, but did not. This raises clear conflict of interest concerns. One theory suggested in public discussion, bidding activity on the 2 PLC-owned parcels may have been intended not to win them, but to inflate prices and reduce competition for the target parcel ultimately acquired by the Lozen personally. Even though PLC did not retain ownership of those 2 parcels, the organization appears to may have claimed surplus overbid funds totaling approximately $1,645.45. They continue to assert self-granted easement benefits on those properties. The surplus funds were generated from tax deed sales. Observers question why the tax collector's office or clerk of courts did not apply these funds directly against outstanding tax debts held by Putnam County or other lien investors' interests on PLC properties. Instead, the surplus went elsewhere, potentially benefiting the very entity that had not paid its taxes. This process has led to criticism that uncollected debts and exemptions ultimately shift costs to compliant property taxpayers, resulting in higher assessments or reduced services. Property taxes fund already rendered public services. When collection shortfalls occur, counties must balance budgets, often by increasing the burden on those who do pay. This is not presented as an isolated event. Consider parcel 17-10-24-4074-0190-0020. The Putnam Land Conservancy was the previous owner and reportedly failed to pay property taxes dating back to the 2013 tax year. In the end, county government became the ultimate bag holder, left with expired tax lien certificates totaling around $553.12, plus additional unmentioned exemptions, to be shown in the following slide. When property taxes go unpaid, they don't simply disappear. In this case, the burden shifted to Putnam County. If no tax lien investor stepped in to purchase the certificates, the county would have been left holding the debt year after year, becoming the ultimate bag holder. That uncollected revenue doesn't vanish. It is ultimately absorbed by the property owners who do pay their taxes, contributing to higher assessments across the board. In Florida, property taxes primarily fund services that have already been rendered: police and fire protection, roads, schools, and other essential county operations. When a portion of the tax base effectively evades payment, compliant taxpayers end up covering the shortfall. Over the 13 years that the Putnam Land Conservancy owned this property, they paid property taxes only once. For 4 of those years, the unpaid taxes left Putnam County as the ultimate bag holder, with uncollected revenue that had to be absorbed elsewhere in the county budget, ultimately burdening all compliant taxpayers. The Putnam Land Conservancy has publicly highlighted its involvement in tax liens and deeds, including in their November 2023 newsletter. Critics argue this creates the appearance of selective enforcement: one set of rules for the Conservancy and its associates, and another for ordinary property owners. Questions have also been raised about self-granted easements retained after losing title, and the use of public infrastructure, roads, while claiming tax advantages. Some observers draw connections to concerns about syndicated conservation easements, which have appeared on the IRS Dirty Dozen list of abusive tax schemes involving inflated valuations and deductions. Such activity, if proven, could implicate antitrust principles under laws like the Sherman Act as well as potential issues around collusion, bid rigging, or improper influence in public auctions. We are not making definitive legal conclusions here. These are patterns that warrant scrutiny by appropriate authorities. No evidence of direct bribery has been presented in this overview, but the optics of a paid director acquiring property at auction while his organization benefits from related tax processes deserve examination. When this property reached auction, no bids were placed. No one was willing to step in and pay someone else's debt, only to have their ownership rights restricted by the previous owners for the rest of the property's existence. As a result, the tax lien investor Remo P. Velazzo ultimately became the owner, potentially facing ongoing economic oppression if those restrictions are not released. If Remo is a veteran, the outcome carries a bitter irony. Someone who volunteered to serve and defend freedom is now forced to absorb a debt created by the Putnam Land Conservancy's failure to pay taxes on property they owned, only to have the freedoms of full ownership restricted by lingering easements that the previous owners self-granted, even though they never paid the debt they incurred. In effect, they were rewarded for their bad behavior at the expense of the person who ultimately paid their debt. And if those easements are not released, Remo remains subject to a form of economic oppression and debt bondage on land he now legally owns.
Thanks for watching. Please like. Oh freedom, my freedom over me.